So let's get started. You've got some slides that we'll be using, but you also have a handout that's sent to you. Do you have copies of the handout? So we have copies, maybe?
Yes.
Oh. All right. All right. Wonderful. So this is a very important topic on human resources these days, and we have a full agenda here. The slides are not changing for some reason now. Okay, so let's think about. Let's see. We don't have the slides up, but we have the workbook. We could go either way. Is it possible to use the slides instead of the workbook?
Yes, the slides, if you look at the tabs on the top of the screen, you have the quick start, the meeting info, and then the measuring ROI. This is the first, the third tab is the PowerPoint.
Okay, now, I'm sorry. Good. Let me see. I'm going to try another headset here. Just to make a little better voice. Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yes, it's very good.
Okay, but it's still not coming through the headset. I'm sorry. What a mess. Yeah. For some reason. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, now I can hear you. Well, okay, so let's get started. First, I just want to say that what we're discussing, we hope, is relevant to your work. We know that you're interested in and involved in human resources, and you're studying that field. I think one of the big challenges in human resources today is that we show executives the value of what we do, and express that value in terms that those executives can understand and appreciate. So we think it's relevant, and it's something you can immediately apply to your work in the HR area. So today we'll explain why the issue of ROI, how it has evolved into our profession so clearly, and we'll examine the methodology by first describing the different levels of evaluation. They're all important levels, and each level builds on the next level. And we'll look at some of the myths around ROI. When people think about ROI and human resources, we often hear a lot of confusion. That is, we hear a lot of concern. Now, I want to double check to make sure that I think I've lost the video to you, and I'm hearing an echo here. So I don't know what's going on.
We are not, you do not see us? I see you very well.
Yeah, okay, I just lost my video to you. I don't see you anymore, but that's okay.
I can see you, Jack.
All right, well, good. That's the most important thing, I think. So let's look at the 10 steps for the ROI. That's the process that we have. It's very methodical, very systematic, and the reason why we should do this, the payoffs of ROI. So with that in mind, let's look at some detail. First, what we see these days is a new definition of value from any of our programs. Just think about any human resource program and think about what data do we have to show the value of what we're doing. In today's situation, it requires these kinds of definitions. We need to have something that's both qualitative and quantitative. It has financial and maybe non-financial these days. That's so important. And then something that's strategic maybe. See, maybe we're helping the organization with market growth, as strategic as that. Or it may be we're working with reducing the time to get new employees on the job. That's very tactical. So we have tactical versus strategic issues. And then we have different stakeholders. We need data that will satisfy all of them. And today, we have a very important stakeholder, and that's the executives who fund what we do. They give us the money for our programs. So they are very important, and I think we can provide data to support them. But one issue is very prominent, and that is the data credible? So we have to be consistent in the collection and analysis so that it doesn't change or vary with the person doing the analysis. And we must be very conservative in our processes and our standards. And it must come from credible sources. So that's kind of fundamental, but we sometimes forget these important things as we think about evaluating our programs. And then there's the particular executive or funder that comes into play, and we call it show me. You know, we've had that issue from time to time where someone gives us money for a particular HR program and they're asking for something back. Show me something. And it started with show me the impact data. Show me how you affect the organization. And then that has evolved into show me the money. See, that's a logical argument. And one of our books that we've written is called Show Me the Money, and it's for executives because they like to do that. They like to ask that question. Now, but we know and they know that if you connect your program to a business measure and you convert it to money, there are other factors that are driving that, and we call that the issue of isolating the effects of our program, because we're sorting out the effects of what we do versus other influences. And some people call that the contribution, the attribution. The important point is to always have a step that shows how much improvement that we have made with our program. If we don't do that, we're not very credible. And then show me the real money. The real money, sometimes, I should say, the real money and compare it to the cost, and that is the ROI, showing the monetary value compared to the cost, and that's what we want to show you today. So what we're suggesting is we've got to satisfy these key stakeholders, and here's the data sets that we would like to offer. Now, if you think about any program that you can think of, from recruiting, from selection, to orientation, to training, to development, to compensation, to the benefits that we provide to employees, to the safety and health, and all of those kinds of processes. Any program that we undertake these days, we can evaluate the effectiveness of that program using these data sets. These are 6 types of data. It starts with reaction, and then learning, and application, impact, ROI, and intangibles. Now, so if you just imagine any program you implement, there's always a reaction from those people who want it to work or need it to work, or people involved in it. Then they must learn what to do. So there's a learning involved, and they must use it properly. So there's application, and there's a business impact that we should be driving, connected directly to our program, and then the financial ROI, return on investment. And we know that there's some impact measures that we cannot convert to money. That will be the intangibles. That's things like maybe teamwork and cooperation, image and reputation, stress, those kinds of things that they're there, They're important, but it's going to be difficult in some organizations to convert them to money. Sometimes we see job satisfaction and job engagement on this list as well. So we look at that as a separate type of measure because we want to make sure that we collect data on those intangibles, can make sure they're connected to our program, and that they are reported credibly to our executives. Now, we finally always include a technique to isolate the effects of our program. That's the important credibility issue. Now, we've got some data here that we'd like to show you. I want you to think through this. Maybe look at the screen for a minute and not your workbook. This is data involving learning and development, which is an important part of human resources. But I suspect the same data will apply to almost any program within the human resource function. And what we did is put these data sets in front of executives. And you can see there are 8 types of data. And we asked these executives these 3 questions. Do you currently measure this about your learning investment? And second, would you like to be measuring that in your learning investment? And third, how would you rank these, with number 1 being the most important, most valuable data set to you, and number 8 being the least valuable? Now, you probably won't be surprised at the results. And you can see it now as you look at your document. And I'm just curious, do you see surprises here? You can see number 3, which is reaction, which is the first outcome measure from our process, is number 8 on their list, which is least valuable. You notice that they don't really want that data. 22% said we want this measure. 53% says we are getting it now. Learning is not much different. 32% are getting learning, 28% want it, and it's the 5th measure, or I should say 5th valuable one. Now, if you look at the rest of the list, you can see the number 1 measure is impact. So executives, particularly this level of executive, want to see the connection between human resources and the impact data in the organization. That's how you're affecting things like productivity and sales, quality, errors, waste, rework, cycle time, cost and efficiency. So it's those kinds of things that they want to see. That's the number 1. 8% said we're getting this data now. 96% said we want that. The number 2 on the list is the ROI. 4% says we're getting it now. 74% said we want that. But even think about level 3, application. This is data that shows that we're doing something. In terms of learning and development, it's using the skill sets. 11% says we see this now. 61% wanted it, and it was number 4 on their list. So do we have any surprises as we look at this list? I think we might have time to ask if there's any particular surprises as you look at these gaps. And would it be the same in Egypt if you went to the top executives? Do you think it would be very similar? Any comments there? Any questions? We've asked this question in a lot of countries, and the typical answer is would probably be the same. That might be a project that you would like to undertake there. It could be just with learning and development, as we've done in this example, or it could be with HR overall. The important point is knowing what our top executives want to see. And I think we will conclude, and most of the experts in this area would agree, that the kind of data that we often provide to executives is not what they want to see. We often provide what we label as inputs. Inputs is how many people are involved in the programs, what is it costing, how many hours are they involved. These kinds of data we call inputs. it's actually number 1 and 2 on this particular list. So let's look at it in a little more optimistic profile here. On your workbook, actually on page 3, we show you some data. And we're showing you these 8 data sets that we just looked at, but now we have them arranged in levels, starting with level 0, and then we have 5 levels of outcomes. Now, level 0, again, is the input to the process. And that's again, the number of people involved, how many are enrolled in a particular program in the organization, how many are taking advantage of our wellness program, how many are involved in some particular employee benefit program or something like that, as well as people involved in things like learning and development programs. But it also includes how much time are they involved and the cost of it. That's important. We need to know that. Executives need to know that, but that doesn't speak to the outcomes. The next 5 levels are the outcome. So in any human resource program, you can measure its success with these 5 levels of outcome data. The first one is reaction, as we described before. And so you can see we've got some different categories here. Different data sets. We've got the current status, and this is what we think is being measured at this level now. And then we have our goal. The goal is what we call our best practice. Now, I put 5 years there, and doesn't mean it takes you 5 years to get to this. It means that this is where we sample best practice benchmarking from organizations using this methodology for 5 years or more. And that establishes what we call our best practice. But we also have included in your document the latest benchmarking that we've done. And this is over the HR area. And you can see 100% at level 0. We expect that because we always capture that input data. And then at reaction, 79%, you can see. But if we keep moving on to learning, you can see 30 to 40% is where we think we are now. That means 30 to 40% of our human resource programs each year we're measuring at that level. We suggest a very high level, 80 to 90%, and we have to use simple techniques. It might be just asking someone, do you fully know what you're supposed to do? Do you fully understand this process? And it could be just simple self-assessment learning, but it could be a test or checklist or something there to know that people know what they should know, or are able to do what they need to do to make the program work. You can see our benchmarking there is 54%, less than what we'd like, but we're making progress. Now, level 3, application. This is important. 10% is where we think we are now. That is 10% of our HR programs we're measuring application. The application is how the program is working. If it's a learning program, are they using the skill sets? If it's using some technology, are they using it properly? If it's following a particular procedure, are they doing it properly? So those are very important measurements. If we suggest 30% of our programs should be evaluated at that level, that's our best practice number. And then the benchmarking you can see is 31%, which is a little better than our best practice recommendation, which is good news. And then let's go to the next level, and that's the impact. The impact is a connection to the business measure. To measure at this level, we have to also connect to the business. We must isolate the effects of our program on the data. Now, that's a critical step. We've talked about it 3 times now in the very beginning, and we look at the different levels, and now we're suggesting it be done here. It's going to be a step in our process, and we'll show you a little bit later. So we'd like to see 10% of our programs connected to this level, but we think we may be only at 5%. You can see best practice benchmarking is a little better than that. You can see on your list a number of 14.4%. Now here's the ROI. We think maybe 1% of our programs in an organization on average are evaluated at this level. 5% is where we suggest each year 5% of our programs evaluated at that level. That's the ultimate level of accountability. It's as simple as this. If I put a new program in place to control unplanned absenteeism, for example, I want to make sure that the economic payoff, the monetary benefits of this program outweigh the cost of the program. And so that's the ROI. It's the ultimate level. You can see best practice benchmarking is 4.3%. So those are the different data sets. And I want to give you some examples of these, the types of data that we collect at each of the levels. And at level 0, that's pretty common there with the number of programs, participants, and so forth. But at level 1, it's very important for us to think about the content of the program, not so much the experience. This is particularly an issue with learning and development. We sometimes focus on measuring and tracking measures such as, was the room comfortable, was the learning environment appropriate, is the instructor effective, was the registration process okay, is the parking appropriately. So any of those are important, but more important would be the content. And these are very important content measures you see here. And you notice in this example, we put asterisks by some of them. These asterisks are those that will normally correlate with application. That is, we'd like to ask something at the reaction time, that is, asking someone, how do they react to this program? We'd like for them to see it as relevant to their work, or important to their success, or it contains new information, or they have an intent to use. Another very powerful one is, would you recommend it to others? That some people call that the net promoter score. That is, they were willing to promote this program to other people. So those 5 things, the relevance, the importance, recommending to others, new information, intent to use, are the most powerful measures at level 1 we can capture. The point we're making is this. A program can easily break down at this level. That is, if people don't see the need for our program, they won't use it, they won't learn it, they won't make it work. And it breaks down at that point. So we want to make sure that we take steps to work on that early on and collect this data early and often during our program to make sure the reaction is proper. So that gets us to level 1. Now let's go to level 2. And simply, it's often just knowledge and skills. Sometimes we call it information. Sometimes we call it capability. There's a lot of different words, but it really gets down to, do they know what to do, and do they know how to do it? There's often knowledge and skills. And then at level 3 is very important. Level 3 is that, do they use it properly? And it's use of information, use of the knowledge, use of the skills, completion of actions, completion of tasks, implementation of ideas, following the policy, using the procedure, using the regulation, and so on. But notice at the bottom, very important, always capture data around the barriers and enablers. The barriers are those things that kept this program from working, kept it from being successful. And the enablers are those things that made it successful. These are very important data sets. That's level 3. Remember, our best practice is 30% of our programs each year measured at this level. But for executives, the number 1 measure is impact, as you remember. And so we need to connect our HR program to the business. and we often don't do that. This is one of our very critical issues. Someone was telling me the other day of this human resource manager that when he interviewed employees, he would ask them, so what do you think, why do you think the human resource function exists? Why do they exist? How do they relate to the business? And what he wanted to hear is that we help the business grow, we help the business survive, we help the business make a profit if it's a private company, if it's a business. And that was the point he was making. And he wanted all of his team to quickly say, we exist to help this company make a profit. And that's the attitude that we need. And what we're saying is our HR programs are connected to the business. And so these types of business measures from productivity, quality, sales, errors, incidents, rework, all of those things are the important measures for executives. If we can connect our programs to those measures, we really get attention. And yes, the ROI is important. We calculate that 3 different ways. Most of our studies calculate it 2 different ways, and that is ROI as a percent, which is the common definition of return on investment in the finance and accounting literature, or sometimes we use the benefit cost ratio. It's also a number that reflects the benefits versus the cost, and it's related to ROI. We're going to show you those calculations in a few minutes. So those are the measures we drive. Now let's look at the process to get to this. We start by thinking about the framework. The framework is the types of data that we have, the data that we offer. And that's going to be 5 levels that we just talked about of outcome data. That corresponds to 5 levels of objectives, and that corresponds to actually 5 levels of needs assessment. So those levels are very important. It forms a framework. And we collect the data in a step-by-step process model. We're going to show you that. Systematic. It's a logic model. Some of you probably have heard about the logic framework, a logical framework, sometimes called the log frame, or just logic model. That's what we have here. It's a logical framework that must exist. We're going to show you more detail in a minute. Then we have standards. And the standards are the rules for working with the data in terms of collecting the data, analyzing the data, and reporting the data. It's very important because this is very conservative. This is where we attract the attention of the executives when they look at our standards. And then practice. Practice means you must do it, use it. You see, the best model in the world is of no value to us if we don't use it. And I think our field is laced with models dreamed up by people that don't work, or they're not being used. They're too complex. They're too cumbersome. They take too much time. So we work very hard to make sure that this is used. In fact, we build capability with this methodology through the ROI certification. And we've offered it there in Cairo several times, and we have plans of offering it in 2014 there. That's teaching people how to do this. And then as they conduct a study all the way to ROI, they become a certified ROI professional. And we have several of them in Egypt now. So our goal is to get more certified ROI professionals. You see, when we started the certification in 1995, we knew that it must be a process that they use. And we have what we call a work product certification. That is, you have to use it to become certified. We know if you use it one time, and that is if you conduct a study all the way to impact and maybe ROI, you'll continue to do this because you see the benefits of it. So we force you into that to apply it. And now we've got over 7,000 people have been to the certification. 3,500 plus have achieved the designation of certified ROI professional. So we know we have that many people who know how to do this and have actually achieved it. And they'll do more, and they'll do a lot of them as they continue their career. And then there's implementation, and that's how do we make it work feasibly and how do we sustain it over a period of time? We've got some organizations using this now for 15 years, so we learn from them, and that's the implementation issue. That's beyond what we can do today, but we'll just show you some of the steps involved in it if we have the time. Now, just quickly want to bring you into a couple of more issues. One of those is the logical flow here. It's the chain of impact. The chain of impact that must exist if we are to have a positive ROI. So we move through this chain as we work through our reaction to learning, to application, to impact. And now we're going to isolate the effects of the program on the impact, and then we can convert that to money, compare it to the cost to generate the ROI. And then we have our intangibles, which are not in the calculation, but still important. Now, I'd like to think about, so I've said only 5% of our programs are taken to the ROI level, 10% to the level 4 impact level. So which programs should go to this level? So here's some benchmarking. Recent benchmarking shows what % of programs are evaluated at this level. So we go to the organizations doing this. Again, those who are doing it for 5 years or more. 235 organizations responded, and this is what they tell us. The number one reason they take a program to the impact and ROI level, that's level 4 and level 5, is the cost of the program, 52%. Now, this is post-recession data for the global. You probably have experienced a recession just because of the turmoil recently there in Egypt. You've gone through probably more recessions than most countries. But coming out of a recession, which you're doing now in terms of a dip in your economy, cost is so important, and executives want to see ROI on those programs that are costing the most. And that makes a lot of sense. But you know, very close to that is if it's a program connected to strategy. That will cause us to evaluate at this level. Or maybe their executive interests. You see, that used to be the number one before the global recession in 2008. That is the number one reason that people would evaluate at those levels is that some executives was asking for it. And it's good to see that it's now number 3 on this list. I'd like to see it even down lower. The point is, let's be proactive and let's select those programs that are most expensive and those programs that are connected to strategy. I would even think that if a program is connected to the operational goals and issues, if it's that important, maybe we should push it up to this level. So that's just some criteria selecting programs for this level of evaluation. Now, I'd like to take you through the model. This is the other part of the elements. We have the framework and now the systematic model, step-by-step process. We call it the ROI process model. It's a logical model. It starts with the objectives, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes, having very clear objectives set for your program. And then we have evaluation plan, that we plan to collect data and we plan to do the analysis. If you'd like, I can send you an example, and you can go to our website and actually find some examples of studies that are on there. I think we've got at least a dozen ROI studies on there. And in those studies, you'll see the steps to plan the study with the ROI analysis plan and a data collection plan. Then we collect the data. We collect reaction and learning. We usually collect that early in the process, but we can also collect it later to make sure that the reaction is still there or the reaction that we want is now there. Then at level 3 and 4 is our critical challenge. How do we capture this kind of data? And I'd like to spend a few minutes on that as we look at more detail. Collecting data at level 3 and at level 4, business impact. This is very important. You remember, most of the executives, 61%, wanted to see level 3, but almost all of them wanted to see level 4. That's 96% from that data that we saw earlier. And if we look at the rest of the model, we take the impact data now. This is fact. We've got an impact, and now we convert it. We isolate the effects of our program on the data. In other words, what effect did our program have on that data? Then we convert the data to money. That is, we get it to a monetary amount. We define the benefit stream. Is it going to be 1 year or more? For a lot of our HR programs, it's 1 year of benefits. We're going to be very conservative here. But sometimes they're long-term programs. If we change a compensation plan, for example, we're going to have a long-term payoff. If I'm changing my work schedules to be more flexible, then we're going to probably have a multiple-year payoff. And in our work there in Cairo, we know that flexible work systems are just now beginning to be implemented by some organizations. It's a huge area, and it certainly will have a lot of traffic, but it's the big barrier to that, as you might expect from the HR perspective, is the managers of employees who always want to see their employees every day, and they don't like to have them work sometime at home. But that's a big trend in the future. Now, the cost is going to be, the next step is to capture all of the cost. We'll show you the different cost categories that all go in there, and then we calculate the ROI. But we also remember that there's some measures not converted to money. That's the intangibles. And then we communicate this data to different audiences, and that's starts with an impact study, and we report a lot of different ways. Many different ways to many different audiences. So that gets us through the model for just a minute. And I want to quickly show you the calculation before we look at some detail. Now, the calculation is, if you think about a program that has a cost of $230,000 and monetary benefits of $430,000 of the 1 year benefits. That is, we claim 1 year value. So the ROI is going to be net. That's benefits minus the cost. So it's 430 minus 230,000. See, that's the money we made off of this. That's in accounting terms, that's the earnings. Now, that divided by the investment, which is the cost, is earnings now divided by investment. That number, which is 0.87, now times 100, so we can put a percent on it, is 87%. What that tells us, for every $1 we spend on this program, we get our dollar back plus another 87 cents. So this is a very good program from most angles. We can show you what's typical and what should be set for an objective a little bit later. I'm going to skip through some you have a document on your page that's really a 2-page profile of this process, and you've got some detail there that we're going to skip through quickly, so I can get to some of the critical issues that we need to address. So these issues are just a little summary on a summary document. Now I'm on page 8 in your document. This is a little exercise, and I'd like for you to just pause for a minute and do the first 4. I want you to think through this, and I'll give you the answers to these. But what we're trying to do is match the evaluation levels with objectives. So these are, remember, we've got the 5 levels of evaluation: reaction, learning, application, impact, and ROI. Let's take the first one together, and then we'll go to the next 4. You can see the complete objective there. After completing this program or project, participants should improve work group productivity by 20%. You see, if we collect data to see if we met that objective, we will be evaluating at the impact level. Impact level, that's the business impact. Productivity is the output divided by time or by people. So that's productivity. Now, if you take the next 4, so 2 through 5, and put a number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 next to that. I'm going to pull it up on the screen in case you don't have it. One more minute. So let's just check our work here. We'd say number 2, after completing this program, participants should initiate at least 3 cost reduction projects in 15 days. We give that a 3 because that's something they're doing. Actions, that's come from the Lean Six Sigma program. And number 3, achieve an average cost reduction of $20,000 per project. That's the same program. That would be level 4, impact. And number 3, use counseling discussion skills in 90% of situations where work habits are unacceptable. That's a level 3 for doing something. And number 5, 2-to-1 benefit cost ratio on a new performance management system. That's the ROI, level 5. And let's go to I'll just go through a couple of others. The next one is, after completing this program, participants should be able to describe the 4 elements of the employee assistance program. That's a level 2. Level 2.
Jack, can you go a bit slower? The connection is not that good.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we had number 2 was 3, number 3 was 4, number 4 was 3, and number 5 is 5. And number 6 is 2, measuring learning. Number 7, after completing this program or project, participants should increase the annual employee satisfaction index by 25% in 3 months. We look at that as a 4. That's the impact we're having on our employee satisfaction score. And we have a variety of HR programs that often are aimed at that. Number 8, integrate employee records into a new database following the 5-step process. That would be 3. We're doing something. Increase research grant funds by 20%. That would be 4. That's an impact. That's like sales for a nonprofit. And we know you have a lot of NGOs and nonprofits there in Egypt. So I'll stop there. We'll go one more just to round it off to 10. On number 10 is 2. It's a simulation. If you need more, the rest of the answers we can give them to you, but you can get the picture here. The important point is that we have to understand objectives at the different levels, and we want to set objectives at different levels. That's an important part of the process. And the objectives come from upfront analysis. I want to introduce you to the V model. The V model is the alignment model. We call it V for the obvious shape here, but it shows you what must be done to get to the objectives at the different levels. Now, ideally, a project, any new HR project, if you just think about it, whether it's involves in recruiting, selection, orientation, training, development, health, compensation, benefits, it doesn't matter. Any project really should start at the top there on the left side and move through the process. the first question we ask, is there a potential for a positive payoff? Another way to ask that question is this a problem worth solving or an opportunity worth pursuing? What we're trying to say is this really a project worth doing? Many of the projects there are, but sometimes we have to just ask ourselves and maybe remind the requester if we don't think it's really worth the effort. Do we really get enough economic benefits, maybe, to cover the cost here? Now, that could go all the way from just a concept to saying, I know this is an important issue, it certainly is worth solving. It may be we don't do anything. Or it could be all the way to a financial forecast, where we actually try to forecast the ROI. We won't get into that now, but you've got those range of possibilities. Business needs is next. That is the particular business measure that we drive. Is it productivity? Is it absenteeism? Is it turnover? Is it some other measure? Is it quality, errors, waste, rework, incidents, accidents, any of those things? So we're trying to get to the business need, and that the performance needs details what is it we should be doing to affect that performance measure. Should we be following a procedure? Should we be using some skills? Should we be using a job aid or technology? What is it we need to be doing? And then level 2 is learning. What do we need to learn to do that? And then level 1, preference, is what is our preference need? That is, how do we prefer to do this? How do we prefer this to be implemented? How do we prefer this program to be in our world? What is our perception of it? And that comes together to design, develop, and deliver the project, and then we evaluate it at the different levels of reaction, learning, application, impact, ROI. And it ends at the top. And so in the middle, you've got the objectives that come through the process. On your handout, we've got an example from a call center network that is where there's excessive unplanned absenteeism. And we walk you through that process. I won't take you through it now for the sake of the time, but you can see what happened here and the objectives and the evaluation through the process. It's a very important tool, and it's probably one of the most important things that shows what we do. But I'd like to take you through some other issues very quickly, and we can come back on other forecasts, other webcasts in the future, go into detail in these different parts. But I want to take you to data collection. You can see here's our methods of data collection for level 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's reaction, learning, application, impact, and ROI. Excuse me, if we stop at impact, ROI is a process measuring. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, level 3 and 4 is what we typically are concerned about. So you can see the methods for collecting data at level 3 and the methods for capturing data at level 4. Just a note, for level 3, at level 3, we're tracking the extent to which a person is using the skills or following the procedure, they're using the technology. The best way to do that is observation. You can see that listed there. However, for observation to work, it has to be either invisible or noticeable. Sometimes that's very hard to do. Our best method for level 4, impact, is to just go monitor ourselves as performance monitoring, the very last one on the list. Sometimes we don't have it readily available, and we collect it from individuals through questionnaires or action plans, two important possibilities you'll see there. That's data collection. I want to go to another challenge. I'm going to hit 2 more challenges and then finish the model, and we'll stop for questions. Our challenge here is to isolate the effects of our program from the data. That is, how do we sort out the effects that our program has on the impact data? If we have too much absenteeism and we implement a new policy to improve absenteeism, the question is, if absenteeism actually changes, how much of the change is connected to my project, my particular program. And here's some classic ways to go about this. These are different techniques that we can explain more detail, maybe in another webcast, from moving from the classic experimental versus control group, a trend line analysis, which is a simple projection of analysis, and then a little more analytical analysis using forecasting. And then we use estimates from a variety of different people, maybe some previous studies. And I can show you quickly what's going on in our benchmark. You can see on the screen, if you can see it, you can see what's happening. 32% of the studies are using the experimental versus control group, 29% using trendline analysis, 56% using the forecasting, which is a more analytical technique. 55% are using estimates from participants. Now, the interesting thing there is that this is an estimate. We prefer not to do that. Participants are very credible. We can take estimates from them if we adjust for the error of the estimate, and it works. And it works well. We get lots of data to support that. You can see the other ranges of possibilities. You can see by these percentages being used that an organization will use more than one technique to isolate the effects of the data, the effects of the program on the data. And then they use the most credible one or the most conservative one. And we'll talk about that probably in a later forecast. I would like to go one more challenge, and that is converting data to money. Sometimes we think that that's a difficult challenge, but it often is not. And if it's a measure that matters to the organization, there's a good chance someone has done that. If it's an output contribution such as sales or production, it's there as a standard value. If it's a quality measure, there's a good chance that there's a cost of the quality. Someone's already done that. If it's a person's time, it could be the value of their time. But we have to make sure that that time is used on other productive work. Sometimes we calculate it ourselves using historical cost, or we go to experts internally or externally, or we go to external databases, or we link with other measures. We see a lot of work there to link something like job satisfaction to retention. And then estimates, maybe, for different groups. So this is the good news is that we have lots of data already converted to money. There are a lot of standard values in the organizations, and it takes very little time to get to that. And there's some records that we can analyze it ourselves, but it takes a lot of resources, so we try to move to expert estimations and databases. Although they might not be high credibility, they certainly would be enough to work. The point, we try to convert it to money. If that doesn't work, we're going to leave it as an intangible. We bring in the cost of the program. That's a fully loaded cost. It covered all of these categories you see on the screen, so that every direct or indirect cost category is always there. That's conservative. That's one of our standards, number 10 on the list of guiding principles. Then let's don't forget our intangibles. The intangibles are those measures that we decide not to convert to money because we couldn't convert them to money credibly with a reasonable amount of resources. That's time and money. Then we have our calculation, benefit cost ratio and the ROI. And you've got in your workbook, we can end with this calculation. I'd like for you to take just a minute to look at page 14 in the workbook. Page 14 has a calculation there, a possible calculation. I'd like for you to take time to do that. You can see a cost of $400,000 and a benefit of $500,000. Again, the benefit comes from collecting data all the way through to impact, converting that impact to money, and that's the monetary value, usually claiming 1 year of benefits. Sometimes it's going to be more than 1 year, but most of the time in HR it's 1 year. So what is your calculation for benefit cost ratio? And what is your calculation for ROI? The answer for benefit cost ratio is 1.25, and that's just 500,000 divided by 400,000. And the ROI is going to be, let's take the long way and the short way. The long way is the net, and that's 500,000 minus 400,000. 500,000 minus 400,000, that's 100,000. And that's divided by the cost, which is 400,000. So 100,000 divided by 400,000 gives you 0.25. 0.25 times 100 gives you 25%. So this is 25% ROI. So you've had a benefit cost ratio of 1.25 leads to an ROI of 25%. You can see the mathematical connection maybe. So the benefit cost ratio minus the number 1 times 100 gives you the ROI. So 1.25 minus 1 is 0.25 times 100 is 25%. So that's the connection between these two. We make this point because benefit cost ratio had its beginnings in the governments, and ROI has its beginnings in business. Benefit cost ratio goes back many centuries in governments. ROI is about 2 centuries now, goes back in the private business. So that the two are related. We wanted to show you that. Now, you're wondering, is 25% good? Well, it depends on our objective. You can see on your next page there is the strategies that we take to set the objective. And that we can set it the same as a capital expenditure in our organization. That would be usually around 12, 15, 18% maybe. So we can use the same number. See, ROI has been used for capital expenditures for a long time now, 200 years. That's for building tools or equipment. Or we can set it slightly higher, maybe 25%, recognizing that this is not capital expenditures, it's people. And or we can set it at break even. 0, it means I got my money back. That's a legitimate objective. Or let the client set the expectation, 30%. For example. So those are the 4 strategies we take. Usually we recommend number 2, set it slightly above other investments. And that usually puts it about 20, 25, maybe 30%. Now, with that in mind, 2 more issues. Very large ROIs coming from these kinds of programs, if they work. And sometimes it's a myth. There's a myth that you don't have positive ROI with a lot of HR programs. That's not the case. Our work, we get to see about 500 or 600 ROI studies each year. This is the kinds of data we're seeing. And now, why should we do this? We'll end with this as a reminder. Hey, this is the best way to align our HR projects with the business need, to show the contribution of selected projects, and earn the respect of senior executives. That's so critical. Hey, build the morale of our team. We started using this back in the 1970s, and I used it with my HR team throughout the 1980s. I was head of HR for a Fortune 500 company there for 8 years. We use this as a way to show the value of our HR tools. It's the best way to build the morale of our own team because they like to see the value they're delivering. And you certainly can use it to justify and defend budgets, to improve maybe support the projects. We need that. Make our projects better, that is, enhance the design. And maybe find projects that are inefficient and not working and redesign them or eliminate them. Or find a project that's working quite well and implement it in other places. And finally, we see this in HR a lot, earn a seat at the table. In the USA, maybe not so much in Egypt, but in the USA, there's HR doesn't enjoy the respect that it should. It's regarded as an administrative, perhaps legal function that adds very little to the business. And therefore, it's not regarded as a person you'd invite to the table for decision making necessarily. We've got to change it. One of the best ways to do that is to show your business contribution. So, Amir, I think we'll stop here for a minute and see if we have questions. And we do have more detail. We can cover it maybe in a later webcast. We plan to do a series of these. So, do we have questions at this point?
Anyone has a question or a comment or sharing an experience with Jack? Okay, it seems it's all clear and everyone is trying to observe what you have been saying. But I would like to connect what you have been saying, Jack, with what we are doing at the center, and I shared this with you previously. As you know, the mission of the center is to develop leaders capable of having a positive impact on their company. And that's why what we are doing, all the activities that we are doing, is starting by the revisiting of the curriculum and reviewing the learning objectives of all the programs to make sure that we are reaching an impact with the participants. Now we're revisiting the evaluation form to check for the implementation and for the impact of the programs as well. When we start dealing with the client, I think we started to promote the concept a couple of years ago, but the market was not ready yet, and we were offering the clients sort of working on an action plan to make sure that they will implement what they have learned in the program. And also as well a recap day that we meet with the participants 3 months after the training. And that took us like 3 years to get this concept well accepted in the market. Normally we used to offer it for free. And people were, when you approach the client after 2 months, they say, no, we don't need this. Today we have a couple of our programs in the customized program. The clients request the action plan and they request a recap session. And the learning objectives are based on exactly what are the business needs, like the V model. They identify the business need and how they want to measure it, and then, for example, one of the clients they say, okay, we want to reduce the time taken by the contracting cycle, the procurement cycle. And this is a very clear criteria that they want to achieve. So all the program is designed to be able to reach this. We did not reach the stage of measuring the ROI yet, but as we discussed before, the market is still immature and we are working on it. And I'm sure when you come in January, we will arrange for a meeting with this particular company to explore possibilities. But I just wanted to connect the ROI methodology with what we are doing in the center and how we see its importance for us.
Well, good. I can see that occurring, and this is a great way to really earn the respect of the business. And it does, as you suggest, you have to change the way in which we implement programs, and people resist change. And sometimes the market is not quite ready. They're not quite ready because they don't know how we can do this. They're not confident that we know how to do it as an HR community. So it'll take some time to win them over. But I'd be happy to work with you and look forward to seeing you in January.
Thank you very much, Jack. Thank you for your time.
Yes, and I'll be happy to do other webcasts. We can get deeper into this or cover different aspects of it, or even take a leadership development program, as you suggest, and show you how we make that work.
Yeah, I think we will. I will get in touch with you to look at the next step. Thank you very much.
And sorry for the technology glitch there.
It's much better than I expected, actually.
Okay, good. Well, take care. Thank you for being there, all of you. we hope to see you in January.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let me say.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.